Hello, this is Angelia with today's wisdom. Today's wisdom comes from Daily Om. Unfolding to others the journey of finding a relationship. And some people are just so worried about that. They can't not be in a relationship. You know, I've known women like that. They have to have someone, or men like that. They have to have someone. They can't not be in a relationship. You know, I was single for 8 years, and I was perfectly happy with that. You know, I did try and date. My son got me onto computer dating. I didn't find anyone on there that was worth dating for me. You know, other people have found that, and that's great for you. I personally just never found anybody that would click, and that might be my exacting standards. But I digress. Before we embark upon the journey of finding the relationship that is right for us, we may want to take the opportunity to refine our concepts of who we are and what we want from life. And that's what I did. I worked on myself first. I got myself together because I was trying to be who my parents wanted me to be. You know, my mother really wanted me to be a secretary at a law office or a, doctor's office, and I got to be both of those things. But it really didn't make me happy. It was more of a problem in my life than it did make me happy, and I didn't make a lot of money, because I ended up being a single mom with 3 kids, and money was going for food and clothing and stuff like that. So I wanted to get my own self together because I knew that some of the stuff I was taught and were programmed into me were not right, were not okay. And I did have low self-esteem. Some people don't think that about me, but it was true. They thought I was great, and that's their own inner reflection. If they have low self-esteem, they might think that about you. If it looks like you're living a better life than them, that's their own baggage they're carrying around and projecting onto you. I wanted to get myself straightened out before I got into another relationship, because I didn't want to get in another relationship that was the same. Interestingly enough, I ended up with the same person, but we ended up doing some work on him too. So we both did some inner work and got our shizzle together so that we could have a happy relationship, because we always knew we loved each other. We just didn't know how to love each other because we weren't taught the right way. We weren't taught to fight fair or anything like that. So, we have a nice happy relationship now, and that's a good thing. And like I said, you have to know what you want out of life before you can get it. That way, we are clearer on the kind of person we want to attract into our lives. Where I live, there's a traditional aspect, a social aspect to certain behaviors. There's a lot of sexism and things going on, and I'm not okay with that. Because I know I'm as smart as most men, if not smarter than most men in my area. I can do anything they can do. I'd hate to sound like the song, I can do anything you can do. I can do better than you. But, that's kind of how I feel about that. If I can't, like, we were moving some stuff in the bedroom the other day, and of course I can't lift a big heavy box. But what I did was I put my hands on the side of the big heavy box, rocked it back and forth, and I got it to the spot I wanted it to be in. So I didn't use force, I used finesse, and got her done. So, just because I don't have your big muscles and I ain't as tall as you doesn't mean I can't get her done. Yeah, I just have to go a different way about it. So, part of the journey of finding a mate is learning how to become our own mate. And that's something that a lot of people don't get. They think another person is going to complete them. They're my life. And that's a mistake, because no one is going to complete you. You have to complete yourself. That's your job. You come up, you have most everyone I know has had some, trauma growing up, and your job is to deprogram that, take out the garbage, and then become who you are as an adult. And if you don't do that, and you look for a mate to fix you or to complete you or whatever, that's a romantic notion, but it's not going to happen. And you need to have your own shizzle together, so that you can have a relationship with a mate, because that's what it's about. Two people who choose each other and have a relationship. It's not about you complete me, I complete you, or nothing like that. You're supposed to complete yourself, have your stuff together, so that you can meet someone else who's complete and they have their stuff together, and then you can have a functional, healthy relationship. When we can learn to meet our needs without relying on someone else, and that's a big thing sometimes for women and men. Sometimes women think they need the man with the money to meet their financial needs. And sometimes men think they need the housewife to meet their physical needs. And both are in error. Women can have jobs, and now there's still that little glass ceiling we won't talk about. I could get into some stuff. But, I've worked at places where there came people in after me making more money than me, and it's like, hey, wait a minute. And they're like, well, their needs, my needs too. What about me and my 3 kids? We need. But again, we don't need someone to rely on to complete us. And we don't have to form relationships from the space of needing or emptiness to be filled. Because if you think you need a person, then you're not getting into the relationship because you want the person. And that's the thing. Women have done it for centuries. It's just a fact of life. They had the matchmakers and everything. We're going to give you the best match we can. This person here. But you shouldn't really get into a relationship because you need someone. You should get into a relationship because you want someone. Because that's going to be the happier relationship there, because you want someone. And if you have trauma and you have wounds and a hole where love needs to be, then you can't rely on another person to fill that for you. You have to complete yourself and fill your own holes, so that you're in a good place when you get into a relationship with someone else, so it can be a healthy, happy relationship. We can also discover our intrinsic value. And you do have value. Everyone on earth has value. God put you here for a reason. You're here for a reason, or you wouldn't have been here. You wouldn't have been born. You might have been stillborn. But if God didn't want something out of you, you wouldn't be here. Separate from what someone else might be reflecting back to us. So sometimes people are reflecting back to us things that are not true, that are part of their baggage. They might call you names, call you dumb, ugly, stupid, whatever somebody might call you. That's usually some some of their baggage slipping in. Because if someone really had a problem with something you did or whatever, they'd offer you constructive criticism. Well, I noticed this happened. Why don't you, do this? And that's what I always try to do. I don't, say you or whatever. I was like, this thing, this situation or whatever. And then you can build on that. So, getting to know who we are and learning to love ourselves creates a solid foundation of self that we can bring into any relationship. So like I say, if you know who you are and you're doing you, then when you come into a relationship, you're going to be in a happy, healthier relationship because you know who you are and what you want out of life. And there have been people I've dated once and that was it. I knew there wouldn't be a second date because of stuff they said or did. And I'm like, okay, yeah. At the end of the date, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling it. It's me. You're just a different type of person that I want to be in a relationship with. And, I'm sure for someone, you're going to be a great match, but for me, I don't believe you are. And because sometimes you just know. And now I've had arguments on that. Oh, you don't know. Give us 2 or 3 more dates and No, I already know. I already know, buddy. Because of, like I said, I have a problem with isms. So if we're on a date and you start throwing racism, sexism, whatever out there, I know there's not going to be another date. This is not happening. And if you are cruel and mean and just plain old ugly to people, there's not going to be another date. I mean, I was on a date with a guy and he demeaned our waitress and he was just being rude to them. And I guess he thought it made him look big or cool or something. But what it made him look like was a complete ass. So there was not another date there. We are fortunate to live in a time when relationships can take on unique forms and unfold at a pace that is right for us. Because not everybody, is in a hurry anymore. It used to be in my mother's day, because my mother told me some of these things. If you all fell in love, you'd get married ideally before you had sex, so that if you had sex and you had a baby, then you'd have a baby. Now, that it didn't always happen. I happen to be a surprise. But, they got married as soon as they found out. So, nowadays, my kids and other people of the millennials and on down, they aren't so in a hurry to get married. They want to be sure, we're going to be in a lifelong partnership. They'll live together, they'll have kids and all that stuff, and then they'll wait, to get married. So, there's the Irish tradition of hand fasting. Me and my husband did that before we got married, where, the priest wasn't around as much, so the community gave them a hand fasting, saying they could live together and see if they were right for each other and they want to get married when the priest came around next. And so they lived together for a year and decide if they're going to get married. Now, again, religiously, some people disagree with that, but Jesus told us to love the person, not the sin, and to forgive sins and talk to people about their sins and everything. So, again, I try to not be too judgy because, my husband and I, we were together for 8 years before we got married again. Because we wanted to be sure we were going to do it right and not goof it up. Friendship, dating, open relationships, long-term relationships, long-distance relationships, or committed relationships, we are free to choose the kind of relationships that we want. And now on that note, I think men and women should be friends first. There was a guy who was like coming on to me, and I just happened to say the word, I'm glad we're friends, and he took that the wrong way. He freaked out. I didn't even know that was a thing, that if you told a man that you were friends, he thought he was in the friend zone, and you were never going to have like a relationship. Well, he retaliated against me for that. And I was just like blindsided, because I was like, wait, what? But I think you should be friends. My husband and I were best friends in high school before we ever started dating. So I think you should be friends first, because that way you build, likeness. You like the same things. You like going and doing the same things. Excuse me. And I think your spouse should be your best friend in the world. That's what I think. Dating, of course, like I said, dating's an experience. And it's harder nowadays because, like, is he going to pay? Am I going to pay? Are we going Dutch? What's happening? So, open relationships. I personally don't believe in them. There are people who do believe in them and think that's the way. And then when I got divorced, I was kind of thinking that way too, because it's like, I don't even want to be in another serious relationship because it's ridiculous. I just want to, love who I love, and, and then when we don't love each other anymore, I'm going to go away. But, that was my hurt. That was my hurt talking. But I think your heart, monogamy is the way humans are. I think, there's a lot of animals who are that way too. And I think that if you have an open relationship, you're just letting other people in to your relationship, and that causes jealousy, insecurity, and I think that's just the recipe for the downfall of any relationship. And again, long-term relationships, I believe in those. I believe in love. I believe that, two people can work out and have a great relationship for the rest of their life. Long-distance relationships, I think those can even work if you're both committed, and that requires communication, on the phone with each other, you Skyping each other, whatever, but I think, it can work for a short period of time, but you have to be committed to the relationship. You can't be cheating, while you're out here and he's out there or whatever. So again, you decide what you want. And like I said, I just gave you my advice on these things, but ultimately, it's up to you. If you want to be in a relationship, but haven't found the right one for you, remember that the universe works in perfect order. Like I said, my first coaching client, she was up in her 70s, and she had married a man young, and he passed on, and then she was like, I don't know why I married him, and I don't know why I stayed with him, because once it became apparent to me he was an abuser, I just stayed in the relationship because I thought that's what I should do. And my grandmother had told me that. She said, because I asked her one time why she didn't divorce my grandfather, and she said, because I was taught that nice ladies didn't get divorced. And so I think their generation, that was what they were taught. And that's a shame. But anyway, she ended up with a boyfriend that she met in church. And this one clicked. This was a good man. He wasn't an abusive man, and he was a good man. He sent her flowers and stuff. So it's never too late. Because I know people my age, and they're like, I never found anyone. Never going to find anyone. But that might not be true. You might be ready to have a late life relationship that's going to knock your socks off. So, don't think it's too late ever. Maybe all this time alone has been part of your preparation period for meeting your intended partner. So again, it's not too late until the day you die, and then maybe you aren't meant to have a partner on earth. Maybe you're being reserved for a special spot, up in heaven, and that just wasn't part of the plan. Even the relationships in our lives that haven't worked out as we had hoped serve us by teaching us to make better choices in our next relationships. Ain't that the truth? I've had some short-term relationships that I was just like, how did I not see this in the beginning? How did I not see this? Because I've been with people who are just complete narcissistic sociopaths. It was all about them, and everyone else was someone to be used. The chameleon thing, like I said, watch out for that. If you start dating someone and they are someone else to everyone else, whoever they're in with, that's how they act. The chameleon thing's a big tell that there's some personality issues there. And then I've been with some people who are just too big for their britches. They think they are God, and they can just do whatever they want to other people, to teach them lessons or whatever the hell they think. And it's like, you know what? You're not God, and last I checked, God is still there, and, whatever. And like I said, then there's people who, I don't know, I know in the 70s there was a school of thought for men that if you're mean to a woman, she'll like you better and stay with you. It's like, yeah, no. No, terrible advice. I don't know who you're doing it. I mean, there might be some women with low self-esteem that, go for that. But most women don't. And you're going to end up in some trouble, in some trouble, some retaliation trouble, or some legal trouble. Because, no, we don't enjoy that. We don't like being treated bad. We want to be treated good. We want to feel happy and in love. And, if you're treating us bad, we're going to strike back. So, finding the relationship we want can come early or later in life. It may even happen again and again in one lifetime. And I know women who've been married 2-3 times and were perfectly happy with each marriage. There's a woman I know, she's been widowed, twice, and she's, working on her third. And she says that there was no problems, that she loved them and it was great. It happens. There is no right or wrong for how to find a relationship, nor is there a timeline that you have to follow. And some people think that. There are people who think if you're not married by the time you're 21, you're an old maid, or 30 or 40 or whatever the number might be. And that's just not true. Because like I say, when it's right. When it's right. And when it's right, then you're going to do the thing that you feel is right. Follow your heart. And that's what you got to listen to, your heart. Don't listen to everybody else, because that's a mistake that me and my husband made in our first marriage. Everybody was telling me stuff about how he should be, and everybody was telling him stuff about how I should be. And so we brought this stuff home, and it caused nothing but trouble and fights. And these people weren't treating their partners like that, because they wouldn't have been married if they were. So, listen to your inner voice, because it knows. Continue to become your own soulmate. Because, like I say, when you're in a good place for you, then you can be in a good place for other people. As the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup, only a full one. And stay open to love. Jesus said, love you one another, for it covers a multitude of sins. Remember that the journey of finding the right relationship begins with being in right relationship with yourself. And that is true, 100%. So, if you unfold to others, give them a chance, you might find a relationship. Or you might not. Again, like I say, but you got to take the chance if you ever want to have a good one. So, think about it. Please like and share this wisdom so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. The link to that, is in my posts. I always make videos right after lunch, so that's funny. But, thanks for watching. That's all for now. Until next time.